Heath Ledger's last words to Christopher Nolan begin with a question that will haunt the director forever. January 20th, 2008. 5:52 p.m. Heath sits in his Soho apartment, staring at Nolan's number on his phone screen. He's been holding the phone for 17 minutes, building courage for a conversation he knows will change everything. When Nolan answers, Heath's first words are, "Chris, I need to know if we can undo what we did." The call lasts 41 minutes and 17 seconds. By the end, both men understand that some artistic choices cannot be reversed. It's been 11 months since The Dark Knight wrapped filming. 11 months of Heath trying to separate himself from the Joker's consciousness, but the character has taken permanent residence in his mind, and Heath knows it. Christopher Nolan has been avoiding Heath's calls for 3 weeks, not from callousness, but from guilt. The director, who prided himself on psychological realism, had watched his lead actor disappear into a role so completely that the person who emerged was fundamentally different. But today, Heath's call comes with an urgency that Nolan cannot ignore. Heath sounds different. Nolan later confides to his wife, Emma Thomas, "Not like the Joker, not like the Heath I knew either. Like someone caught between two people, speaking for both of them." The conversation begins with Heath asking a question no actor should have to ask. Is it possible to become a character so completely that you can never go back to being yourself? But what Heath reveals about his mental state in the first 10 minutes will change everything. Nolan thinks he knows about method acting. Heath explains that he hasn't slept properly in 8 months. Not from insomnia, but because sleep brings dreams that aren't his own. Dreams where the Joker shows him memories that never happened to Heath Ledger. Childhood moments involving abuse and neglect that Heath never experienced, but which feel completely real. The Joker has a whole backstory in my head now. Heath tells Nolan, a history, a psychology, relationships with people I've never met. And it's not stuff I created for the role. It's stuff that just appeared. Nolan, a director known for his logical approach to filmmaking, struggles to process what Heath is describing. This goes beyond method acting, into territory that has more in common with clinical psychology than performance art. "Heath, what you're describing sounds like dissociative identity disorder." Heath interrupts. "I know. I've been researching it for months. But here's the thing, Chris. I don't think this happened by accident." Heath's next revelation will reframe everything they both thought they knew about the Joker's creation. Heath explains that during his 6 months of preparation, he wasn't just creating the Joker's personality. He was systematically destroying his own identity to make space for the character to exist. The notebooks, the isolation, the methodical psychological destabilization, it was all designed to create a void that the Joker could fill. "I didn't become the Joker," Heath tells Nolan. "I created conditions for the Joker to become real, and something actually moved into that space." Nolan later describes this moment as the most terrifying thing any actor has ever said to me. For the first time in their relationship, Nolan asks Heath if he wants to see a psychiatrist, not for the role, not for publicity reasons, but for Heath's actual mental health. Heath's response chills Nolan. "I've seen 3. They all say the same thing. The Heath Ledger personality has been compromised beyond repair. The question isn't how to fix Heath. The question is whether Heath should continue existing at all." But Heath's real reason for calling becomes clear 20 minutes into the conversation. "Chris, I want to make a deal with you," Heath says. "I want you to help me get rid of the Joker permanently. But that means erasing the performance too. Everything we created together. Are you willing to destroy your own work to save what's left of me?" Nolan sits in silence for nearly 2 minutes. Phone records confirm this pause. 2 minutes of dead air while both men contemplate the implications. When Nolan finally speaks, his words will echo in Heath's mind for his final 48 hours. Heath, I can't make that choice for you. But if you want to try, I know people who might be able to help. Nolan explains that during the filming of Memento, he consulted with experimental psychiatrists who specialize in memory manipulation and personality reconstruction, techniques that exist at the edge of medical ethics, but which might be able to separate Heath's original personality from the Joker's consciousness. It would be like psychological surgery. Nolan explains, we'd essentially be cutting out parts of your memory, parts of your emotional responses, parts of your creative identity. You might come back as Heath, but you might not come back as the same Heath. Heath's response reveals how desperate he's become. Chris, the Heath you knew, is already gone. At this point, we'd just be trying to build someone new from whatever pieces are left. But what Heath says next changes the entire trajectory of their conversation. There's something else, Chris. The Joker doesn't want to be erased. He's been fighting back. Heath describes experiences that sound less like method acting and more like psychological warfare. Waking up to find his apartment rearranged in ways he doesn't remember. Discovering notes written in his handwriting that he has no memory of composing. Having conversations with friends where he says things he never intended to say, watches himself speak words that come from someone else's mind. Last week, I called my sister Michelle, Heath explains. I meant to ask how she was doing. Instead, I spent 20 minutes explaining to her why everything funny is also fundamentally cruel. I watched myself say these words. Chris, I could hear myself speaking, but I couldn't stop it. Nolan realizes they're discussing something far beyond his expertise as a director. Heath, this sounds like you need immediate medical intervention. I tried that, Heath responds. Dr. Williams at Mount Sinai. I spent 3 hours explaining everything to her. You know what she told me? She said it sounds like I've created a secondary personality, so convincing that even I believe it's real. She thinks the Joker is an elaborate delusion I've constructed to avoid taking responsibility for changes in my own personality. Heath pauses, and when he speaks again, his voice sounds different, flatter, more controlled. But Chris, what if it's the other way around? What if Heath Ledger is the delusion, and the Joker is who I really am? This moment marks the turning point in their conversation, and arguably, Heath's final psychological break. Nolan later tells Emma Thomas that Heath's voice changed so completely during this part of the call that he wondered if someone else had taken the phone. It wasn't the Joker's voice exactly, but it wasn't Heath either. It was someone else entirely, someone who found the whole situation amusing. Heath, Nolan says carefully, I need you to listen to me. The person I'm talking to right now, is that Heath, or is that someone else? The response comes after a long pause. Does it matter? We're all just voices in the same head anyway. Nolan makes a decision that will haunt him for the rest of his career. Instead of calling emergency services, instead of rushing to Heath's apartment, he continues the conversation. Later, he'll wonder if this choice cost Heath his life. Heath, if you're still there, I want to help. What follows is the most disturbing part of their entire conversation. Heath's voice shifts back to something resembling his normal tone. Chris, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to remember it exactly. The experimental therapy you mentioned, I want to try it, but not to save Heath. I want to use it to complete the transformation. What do you mean? I want to erase Heath Ledger completely and let the Joker have full control. Not for a role, not for art, but because being caught between two people is driving me insane. One of us has to win, and Heath is too weak to survive the fight. Nolan's notes from this conversation found in his personal files after Heath's death include a detail he's never shared publicly. Heath spent the final 10 minutes of their call describing a specific plan for psychological suicide. Not physical death, but the complete erasure of Heath Ledger's personality while leaving his body intact. Imagine if the Joker could live in the real world, Heath explains. Not as a performance, not as a character, but as an actual person. All of Heath's memories, but the Joker's perspective on them. All of Heath's relationships, but the Joker's way of understanding love and friendship. Heath, you're describing something that would destroy everyone who cares about you. No, Chris. I'm describing something that would free them. They've been mourning the real Heath for months without realizing it. I'm just suggesting we make the funeral official. But Heath's final words to Nolan reveal something even more disturbing than his psychological deterioration. Chris, there's one more thing. When you watch the footage of me as the Joker, really watch it, you'll notice something in my eyes during certain scenes. Moments where I'm not acting anymore, where the Joker is actually looking directly at you through the camera. Nolan reviews this footage after Heath's death. He finds exactly what Heath described. Moments where Heath's eyes show a consciousness that doesn't match the character or the actor. Something else looking out from behind Heath's face. Those moments, Heath continues, that's when you can see who's really in control. And if you look carefully, you'll notice there are more of those moments in later scenes than in earlier ones. The Joker was winning scene by scene, take by take. The conversation ends with Heath making a request that Nolan finds impossible to fulfill. Chris, if something happens to me in the next few days, don't let them blame the Joker. He's not the villain in this story. He's just better at surviving than Heath was. Nolan's last words to Heath are, Heath, please don't make any permanent decisions tonight. Whatever you're planning, wait until we can talk in person. Heath's response will replay in Nolan's mind every day for the rest of his life. Chris, the decision was made months ago. Tonight, I'm just finally accepting what's already happened. The call ends at 6:33 p.m. Phone records show it was the last time Heath Ledger spoke to Christopher Nolan, and the last time Nolan heard Heath's actual voice. But what Nolan discovers after Heath's death reveals that their conversation had consequences neither man anticipated. In Heath's apartment, investigators find a letter addressed to Christopher Nolan. The letter, written in Heath's handwriting but signed J, contains a single paragraph. Chris, thank you for trying to save Heath. But some people aren't meant to be saved. They're meant to be replaced. Don't blame yourself for what I've become. Blame yourself for creating something. This perfect J. Attached to the letter is a USB drive containing 47 minutes of footage. Heath shot after their phone conversation. The footage shows Heath preparing for something, but speaking directly to Nolan through the camera. Chris, if you're watching this, it means the process is complete. The person you knew as Heath is gone, but your creation lives on. Isn't that what every director wants? A character so real they continue existing after the cameras stop rolling. But the most disturbing part of this footage comes at the end. Heath looks directly into the camera and speaks in a voice that's completely different from both his natural tone and the Joker's theatrical delivery. It's the voice of someone else entirely. Director's commentary. This voice says, Scene 1, Take 1. The transformation of Heath Edward Ledger. Final performance. And action. The footage ends with Heath walking toward his bedroom, but moving with the Joker's distinctive gait. The timestamp shows this was recorded 18 hours before his death. Nolan has never released this footage, but he's confirmed its existence to Warner Brothers executives and Heath's family. According to sources close to the production, the footage is so disturbing that it's been locked in a vault and will never be made public. The 41-minute phone conversation between Heath Ledger and Christopher Nolan changed both men forever. For Heath, it was his final attempt to find a way back to himself. When that attempt failed, he made peace with disappearing entirely. For Nolan, it was the moment he realized that his pursuit of psychological realism in filmmaking had gone too far. He's never since asked an actor to prepare for a role using complete psychological immersion. "I created something that consumed Heath," Nolan confided to Emma Thomas. "I gave him permission to disappear into a character, and he took that permission literally." The Dark Knight becomes the most successful film of Nolan's career, and Heath's performance as the Joker is universally acclaimed as revolutionary. But for Nolan, every accolade feels like an indictment. Heath Ledger died 47 hours and 26 minutes after his final conversation with Christopher Nolan. The official cause of death is listed as accidental overdose, but those who heard that last phone call understand the truth. Heath didn't die from prescription medications. He died from a year-long battle for control of his own mind, a battle he chose to end by surrendering completely. Christopher Nolan's films after The Dark Knight show a marked change in approach. Gone are the deep psychological character studies, the invitations for actors to lose themselves completely in their roles. Instead, Nolan focuses on plot-driven narratives where actors can maintain clear boundaries between themselves and their characters. "I learned something about the cost of perfect art," Nolan explains to a close friend. "Sometimes the price is too high to pay, even when the result is extraordinary." Heath Ledger's last words to Christopher Nolan weren't goodbye. They were an acknowledgement that some artistic journeys have no return ticket. That complete transformation pursued without limits can mean complete destruction. "The person I'm talking to right now," Heath had asked, "is that Heath or someone else?" By the end of their conversation, even Heath no longer knew the answer to that question.